And now, Bud Elliott for Wines of California.
The story of wine is as much about families as it is about soils or climate or time-tested varietals. It's about the great wine families of the great wine-growing regions all around the world. It's a story of trial and error, of accumulated knowledge and wisdom over many, many generations, instinct and art, and the skill required to learn and refine and reinvent what nature has provided so generously. The story of Silver Creek Winery begins with the Cribari family more than 150 years ago in the small village of Consenza, situated in a high ancient valley between the Sila Plateau and the steep coastal mountains of southern Italy. Like generations before them, the Cribaris were fruit growers, and in 1859, Beniamino Cribari was born into this life. From that moment, it was understood that he would inhabit a world where the crafting of fine wine was not only an ancient and treasured tradition, but the very foundation upon which the family was built.
By the late 1800s, conditions in Italy had become so difficult that supporting a growing family had forced Benjamino, who's my grandfather, to leave the old country. He left for America with his oldest son, Fiore, who's my grandfather. The two of them worked in the railroad. My grandfather, Fiore, was a water boy, and Benjamino pounded the stakes and built the railroad between Colorado and California. When he finally came to Central California, he saw the beautiful weather in San Jose. It was very much the way it was in Italy. At that point, he brought the rest of his family in, his daughters, his wife, and his other two sons, and purchased 40 acres of hillside land with a lovely creek running through it, and which was called Silver Creek. It had stands of oak trees that lined the creek bed, but every year as the leaves budded out, they took on a silvery cast. Benjamino planted grapevines from cuttings given to him by his neighbors. The climate was absolutely perfect. It was very similar to the soil he had left in Italy.
The very first wine crush came in 1904. As the vines grew, so did the family, which now included sons Stan and Anthony, and soon included two daughters, Mary and Helen. Before long, Beniamino had more grapes and more demand for his delicious wine than he knew what to do with. So, with the help of his sons, he expanded his small winery and secured the winery's first commercial sale in 1913. The rest, as they say, is history. Production followed demand, and demand for the family's wines grew steadily until they were found in homes and restaurants and churches on both coasts and all over America. The family was doing its part to make California one of the premier wine producers in the world. The first vine cuttings were actually brought to the New World in 1520 by the Spanish. California's wine industry began in 1769, when the first of 21 Spanish missions was established along the coast. Wine produced from the so-called mission grapes was used for sacramental purposes. In the mid-20th century, a wine renaissance swept the California growing region, and in 1976, for the first time in history, California wines beat French wines in both red and white categories in international competition. Today, there are more than 1,200 wineries in California. Silver Creek Winery has distinguished itself as among the premium wine producers in the state.
At Silver Creek Vineyard, we have 5 different varietals. The most popular varietal is our Cabernet Sauvignon. We also have Merlot, Chardonnay, White Zinfandel, and Sauvignon Blanc.
Today, John Cribari, president of Silver Creek Vineyards, and his son Ben, director of sales, continue to nurture and perfect the art of family winemaking established by the patriarch Beniamino over 150 years ago in the old country. The 5 generations of winemakers are commemorated on the very labels of Silver Creek Vineyard.
The fruit that goes into the Silver Creek Vineyards wines comes from select areas in California with a combination of soils, water, climate, sunny growing conditions that allow the grapes to develop their harmonious varietal character and balance like nowhere else in the world.
The finest grapes of each varietal are then blended by highly skilled winemakers and bottled each season to ensure that every premium bottle of Silver Creek Vineyards may be enjoyed to the fullest as aperitifs, with meals, as a refreshing glass alone, or any time at all.
I think the one constant through all the years was my family's commitment for the crafting of fine wines. Our determination to constantly strive for perfection has taught us how to consistently produce wonderful wines year after year, and we're proud to offer the Silver Creek Vineyard wines as our very best.
The family tradition of taking a personal interest in and special care of each and every bottle of Silver Creek Vineyard's premium wine continues at the winery's headquarters in Central California.